Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now what I've got whizzing around in front of me today is one of the Abominants from the Genestealer Cults. And I have been asked a few times about painting Abominants or the Aberrants, and I figured, well, this guy's pretty cool. It'll be an opportunity that you can take these techniques and apply them to either of those miniatures. Now this one today uses a couple of different paints from different manufacturers, but the point is more that you can experiment as you like, on the go. It's pretty simple. So the paints will all be listed in the description below. Let's get started. Now for this fella, full disclosure, I am going to be quite closely following one of the guides that's up on the Army Painter Academy, which I will link to in the description. Now Tyler, who is the social media specialist for the Army Painter, he does a lot of guides. He actually paints quite a few things that I'm very keen on. Imperial Guard, these fellas, he's got Death Guard Army as well, so man of excellent taste. And his guides are really, really helpful. Now what I'm going to do, like I said, is quite closely follow it, but there are one or two steps that we're going to change. The order is going to be slightly different on a fella this size, and we do have to take into account the extra carapace that's going to be on this guy. So I'm going to switch things up a little bit, but full credit to Tyler for giving me a lot of the ideas that are going to be in today's video. Now obviously we've started with a grey spray, and here I've used Ash Grey from the Army Painter. You could also use Grey Seer from Citadel. It's a bit lighter than this is. It won't matter too much to the final finish. Now to start off with, what I've got is Crusader skin, and we're going to apply that all over his human-ish bits. Now I am using here, this is one of the base coat brushes. It's a little synthetic, and it's quite handy for what I've got in mind, because I tend to find when I'm applying speed paint or contrast, that sort of thing, I tend to struggle a little bit keeping a tip on the brush. It splits quite readily. But instead, with these synthetics, what I tend to find is you get a nice stiff tip which keeps its point while you're working. So I'm going to go around all of his skin. Now on his leg here is a fine place to show you this. Wherever you're applying a contrast or a speed paint style thing, it's a good idea to push the tip of your brush, especially if you've got a nice firm brush tip like this, up to the edge of the detail, so that you get a little bit of pooling at the edge there. I just find it works best to help accentuate the shading at the 2 points where areas of detail meet. Now take your time going around, making sure you're not missing any of the little spots of skin that are showing through his gear. And don't forget his little Igor thing. God, that's yuck. I do not like that little dude at all. Now, the painting guide for clothing suggests Runic Grey from the Army Painter, but I don't have that. So instead, I'm going to use Space Wolves Grey, which is pretty similar. Not exactly the same color, but close enough. It will not matter too much. So take your time here. Parts where it's not going to matter, if you do splurge over a little bit, are going to be things like the metallic areas, because obviously we're going to paint those with a traditional acrylic, and it will cover any mistakes we make with our speed paint or our contrast. All the same, be as tidy as you can here. It will make your next steps easier. Now once that's dry, we can move on to the red details. Now, just to quickly point out, I did miss a couple of bits of skin, so I quickly nipped back with the Crusader skin and tidied those up. So what I've got, this is Slaughter Red from the Army Painter. This one is very, very similar to Flesh Tearer's Red, though to put it a strange way, it's a little less meaty. If you've ever seen them side by side, you'll get what I mean, but this one you can swap for the Flesh Tearer's Red. I just think this is a little less gross. Anyhow, I'm going to apply this over all of the red details. So as well as the red details on the Abominant itself, I've got to remember to pop that onto the cloak that his little Igor thing is wearing too. And as you'll see, I've also painted in the handle on his hammer with that. Now on these fellas, there isn't particularly much of this, but I have Grim Black, and we'll paint in the little black rubbery parts of his suit. This guy isn't wearing much. It's worth having a look at it because you'll be able to paint this on your cultists. And on the front there too. I'm going to flip this around, and I've got here a little bit of pallid bone. which I'm going to use to paint in his rather disturbing collection. Then once that is dried, his little bag here and his belt, I'm going to paint with Satchel Brown. Now, you could also just paint this in with the Grim Black at the same time you have that out, but because you've got the cultists who are going to have little pouches and what have you on them, I figure doing this as well in a similar color to them will help tie it all together. So what I've got on my small dry brush here, this is a little bit of Great Hall Grey. And this one is listed on the side. It has that it is a warm grey-white, and that is perfect for what I've got in mind here. Just a little bit of warmth to it means it doesn't look completely unnatural, as we very, very lightly dry brush along the skin and what have you. But it will also work to catch the details on his clothing, the red bits and what have you. Just take your time. If you need to, you put too much of this on, you can go back to that base color and just go over the top of it again. So as always with dry brushing, you want to make sure that you've got very little on your brush to start off with, because you can always apply more paint, but taking it off is a little bit tricky. So away we go, dry brushing, concentrating towards the edges on all of those soft details. Now with just that quick dry brush, one color, we've actually added a lot extra to that speed paint effect. Now, it's not going to be as perfect as going back and highlighting each of those areas with a specific color, but it's fast. I never promised you that you're going to win a painting competition with these techniques. What we'll move on to now, though, is those hard details. And I'm going to start off, first of all, with true copper. There are a few little bronze parts on this guy where we can just jam this in nice and quick. And don't forget the little icon on his chain here. Now, because most of his chains are over the top of the carapace, like his wrist bindings and what have you, we're going to paint the carapace first. And for this, what I'm going to use is Ultramarine blue. So just a little bit on my brush at a time. In order to keep control of it, you really don't want very much. And then we'll start applying this over those bits of carapace. Now remember, his little Igor fella is right there, and a lot of him is going to be blue, so take your time there. Slow down when you come near to any bits of skin, although don't be too worried, because obviously the fusion of man and alien, that's not a precise science, so a little bit of a splurge of blue here and there will not matter too much. And then what I've mixed up, this is half and half ultramarine blue and a little bit of water. What I'm going to do here is go towards the edges of those plates that are starting to harden and just dab a little bit of this mixture along the edges there. Now, this will do on his arms, around his ankles and what have you as well. And if you want to solidify the color a little bit further, once this has dried, just come back and give it another coat. Now that blue is a little bit flat at the moment, but of course we're not finished. And now we can move on to base coating the metallic bits. So I've got gunmetal, and this is not too terribly difficult, but there's quite a bit of it. So this is the bit which is probably going to be the slowest. So take your time, being as tidy as you can, and look for all the little bits and pieces that you want to be, obviously, silver. Now to add a little bit of depth to the blue, what I have here, this is Purple Swarm. Now I've put 3 drops of the color and then 12 drops of the Speedpaint Medium here to thin this out. So it's quite thin, but it's still going to be pretty intense going on. And concentrate on areas where it's naturally going to collect and be a little bit darker. Now while that's going on the carapace, you can also add a little bit of it to the ridges on his head. It'll go on quite dark, but just dab it with your fingertip. Don't rub it, because you will actually take off some of the paint underneath. We're going to varnish later to prevent that happening during normal handling, but for now, you can just spread this out over the bits that you want to be a little bit more purple, particularly in the recesses of his musculature and what have you. If you want to darken that down a little, just add a little bit to the curvature of those plates, and then bleep, blap, bloop. Now, about halfway through I was doing that, I discovered that you could get exactly the same finish by just taking purple tone and mixing it half and half with Speedpaint Medium. You don't need, goodness me, as much Speedpaint Medium as I had used at first, and you'll still get all of that shading and what have you. So something to bear in mind. But what I'm going to do now is to grab, this is an old synthetic brush. It's a small round one because I want quite a bit of control what I'm doing here. I've got some Baron blue, and I'm going to go ahead and start very lightly dry brushing the edge of these carapace bits. So just enough to pick out a little bit of the edges there, make them a bit more visually interesting, particularly along any spiky bits. Now the great thing about that Baron blue is that if you end up dry brushing a little bit of it over his skin, it's actually going to blend in and give you a funky, pale, icky sort of color, which will suit perfectly well with what we've applied so far. So don't worry about getting a little bit messy with it near the skin. Now I'm going to take some dark tone and I'm going to go over all of the metallic parts. For once, I'm not thinning this down because I'm not applying it heavily over the entire miniature. I can be a little bit more careful about where it's going, and using it straight from the pot is going to give us a slightly darker finish in our recesses. Now while that's drying, I'm going to pop a little bit. This is dark skin shade. I'm going to put this over the handle on his hammer here, and I'm also going to put it on the little gold icon hanging from his belt. Now we're starting to come into the home stretch. What I've got here is some ancient stone, and I'm going to do this, first of all, a little bit across his teeth. I might swap to a smaller brush to do this if I'm going to do that off camera. But these little nodules and bumps he's got, just dot in a little of those with some of this ancient stone. And then, with some maize yellow and Speedpaint Medium, again, roughly half and half, just blorp on over the top of these. Don't worry if it runs onto the skin a little bit. If you want, dab it with your finger. There you go. Perfect pustules. Then finally, in the realm of only if you really want to, grab yourself some plate mail metal and just a few little nicks and scratches of this along the metalwork. We'll add a bit of definition there. So once I'm done with this, what I'm going to do is go take him outside, hit him with a matte varnish, and then he'll be done. The base as well, I'll put the recipe for that in the description. Let's get a look at our Abominant here once he is all finished. And so, there at last, our Abominant is complete. Now, I had a lot of fun painting this dude, and working through some of the odd little inconsistencies and things that I had to change was actually part of the fun there. As you can see, it doesn't matter too much if you are messy or not, the end result is going to look perfectly natural. And beside that, it's really easy to do. So as always, thanks go out to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all of my wonderful patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, including my gorgeous producers who aren't showing up on screen now. Thank you very much for your support, folks. Now, any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the old comment box below. My Blue Sky and Instagram are both linked there too. So, thank you very much for your time, one and all, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.